Hey, Chris here with University of Illinois Extension, and today I want to talk to you about thinning our seedlings and also potting them up if we need to move them to a larger size container to keep holding them indoors as we wait for the weather to warm up to transplant them outside. What we have today is we have tomatoes and we have cucumbers. So I'm going to show you what we have here with a single container of tomatoes, and as you can see there appears to be 8, maybe 9 seedlings in here. Now, typically when we put seeds in a container, we sow them indoors. We put a couple extra seeds in there too, maybe 3, just in case we don't get germination of, say, 1 single seed. In this case, I think we might have overdone it, but I did have a little bit of help doing these. So small fingers kind of have a little hard time separating out tomato seeds on their own. So what we're going to do is we are going to remove at all but one of these little seedlings in here so that the single remaining plant has the space that it needs to thrive, be healthy, and that way we put it on its best leg once we get it out into the garden to transplant and survive and give us some tasty tomatoes. I know it can be hard for a lot of gardeners to try to save all of these little seedlings. I mean, they germinated in the container. It wants to grow. It wants to live in your garden. But you know what? The best thing for this tomato plant is to sacrifice its friends here in the container. You might be tempted to pull out these seedlings if you want to try to keep them alive or just kill them either way. We don't want to pull them though. You can pinch them with your fingernails if you have fingernails. That does run the risk though of also disturbing the root system. My favorite tool for the job is a pair of fingernail scissors. They're small, they can maneuver in and out of these little stems here without damaging the one that we want to save. And so, I prefer using these. So we're going to go in here and we are going to remove all but one. I am looking for usually the one that looks the healthiest. If there's some discoloration of the leaves, if they're yellowing, anything like that, I might remove that. But the one thing I do want to be careful of, especially if we're looking at tomatoes here, is I don't necessarily want to pick the tallest one. Because as you see, as I begin to remove these tomato plants, they're leggy, they're elongated, because they're competing for finite space here in the soil and above the soil. And so once I start removing these, the leggy ones will more than likely flop over. And as they, just kind of flop over, it may get damaged when I'm moving them, watering them. So I kind of want to pick one that is a bit more stout, a bit more stocky. It's going to be tough in this one though because it's so crowded. More than likely, once I remove all these but one, that lone one is probably going to lay down. But let's give it a shot here. And there you have it, my sole survivor here in the single container here. I'll keep an eye on this. There might be a couple other seedlings that might emerge from here, but that's really all you have to do. We'll put it back in the flat, you'll thin it out. Now this plant has the space it needs to grow a little bit more, put on some better green growth and get a better root system, and that way it will be a stronger plant for the long term when we go to transplant this out in the garden. From this point on, I'm going to keep thinning out my tomatoes, I'm going to thin out the cucumbers, and then after that we're going to put them back under the grow lights here in my basement. It's still too cold to put them out in the garden quite yet, so they're going to have to live in here for a little while. Let's say that you planted all of your seed in one container with the hope that once they germinated, you would pull them out and divide them up into their own individual containers. Well, that process is called pricking out, or as I like to call it, potting up. Basically, you're taking your smaller container, you're going to remove your seedlings in here, and then you are going to then pot them up into usually a larger container. It could be a size 1 or 2 sizes larger than what they're in right now. Now, this is a very delicate process. This is something that you don't just pull out the plants and then jam them back into another container. So we have to be pretty careful. Use something like a butter knife. Even the plant label here, we could use the plant label to help dislodge some of the soil around the roots. But essentially we have to be very careful with this, because if this is your only tomato plants, for example, that you have, and you go and you just grab them and gnarl them up, then you'll probably be destroying any hopes of tomatoes you have. So we're going to go back to our scissors here. We're going to loosen up the soil around the base, and we are just going to remove, hopefully, these tomato plants. It's really nice to have a work surface to do this on. So I'm going to remove my flat, pop them out on the work surface here. So now we have our individual tomato plants here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of let them almost fall apart on their own. They are going to need a little bit of encouragement from our fingers here, but very gently we're going to just tease these apart. You can see as I'm pulling them, I'm going to be very careful, both of the roots and the above ground growth, that I'm not just snapping them off at the soil line or somewhere along their stem. And if I handle the above ground portion, you'll notice my hands are not touching the stem at all. If I, say, squeeze or pinch the stem too hard, I could damage this very tender growth, and I could damage the cells in here, which would then just kill everything above it. So if I'm going to pinch something, if I'm going to damage something, I want it to be a leaf, not necessarily the stem that supplies the life to the entire plant. And we have our individual, our 4 tomato plants right here. So because they were growing very tightly and close together, some of them are a little bit leggy, a little bit taller. And because these are tomatoes, what I can do is I can plant them a little bit deeper. So that's what I have my new container right here of soil. I'm going to make a hole. You can use your finger, pencil, whatever it is. Make a good hole. Take my tomato seedling. There we go. Grab it by the leaf, not the stem, as I almost did. And I'm going to take the entire root right here, and I am just going to gently, very carefully arrange that down in the pot right here. We'll cover it up. We'll firm things up around there. And there you go. Here we have our potted up seedling. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a label for it so that I know what tomato it is. I'll put a date on it. And then I will also get it under some lights, give it a good drink of water to help relieve some of that transplant stress that it's going through right now. And then we will wait for warmer weather when we can get this puppy out into the garden. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button down below. And just know, as Illinois Extension Educators, we are here to help you answer your home gardening and landscaping questions. I will also have a link to contact information to the horticulture educators throughout the state of Illinois, so you can find one of us nearest to you. And as always, thank you for watching, and keep on growing.